good to see you this morning.
Good to be with you this morning.
Can you give us any hope now? President Obama had the big meeting last night with Speaker Boehner, Majority Leader Harry Reid. The deadline's looming, Congressman, midnight tomorrow. Can we get a deal done here?
Well, we hope we can get a deal done, but things stand right now where they did late last night when the president talked to the nation. We're very much hoping we can get a deal, but what has been clear is that Speaker Boehner is not really in control of his own caucus. What you've seen over the last weeks and months now is that the Tea Party wing of the Republican caucus in the House is driving the train, and that's why you see them continuing to move the goalposts. Look, I hope we can come together and get a deal. Obviously, the clock is ticking, and we need to get it done, as the president and others have said.
Nora.
Congressman, I know that you're blaming the Republicans for this and that Boehner can't control his own party, but isn't it true that the Democrats deserve some blame as well? I mean, this is last year's budget, and Democrats were in control of both the House and the Senate last year. Do you accept some responsibility?
Well, I'm not trying to point blame. I'm just asking the American people to follow the facts of this, Nora. As you know, last year we did pass what is called a Budget Enforcement Act that did lay out all the levels for the current year that we're in. And in fact, in December, we then cut $40 billion from the president's budget. The Republicans came in and the Speaker said, we want to do another $32 billion. That's what they put on the table. The Tea Party caucus in the House said that was unacceptable. The president has then put on the table $33 billion, more than the Speaker originally asked for. And now the Speaker said no. So, look, the American people can judge for themselves what's happening. But in addition to insisting on having their number or they'll shut down the government, they've also demanded to be able to pick and choose what the cuts are. In other words, they say you got to cut education, you got to cut cancer research at NIH, you got to cut Planned Parenthood, instead of cutting some of the subsidies for the oil industry or cutting big agricultural subsidies. So if you're really interested in deficit reduction and not trying to drive a social agenda through the budget, you shouldn't care how we cut. You shouldn't be dictating the terms of the cuts themselves.
Congressman Donnie Deutsch, I'm sorry, no.
I was just going to add, I think, an objective reading is this, is that the Democrats failed to pass a budget last year. Now what's going on is that you guys are just a few $1 billion apart on this, which is a minuscule amount of money in the scheme of things. It's less than 1% of the entire budget, and that there are some policy riders that the Republicans in the House have put on there, some controversial policy riders that are holding this up. And I guess my question this morning to you, Congressman, is the president said last night when he appeared in the briefing room at 10:45 was that there are very narrow differences, and he asked you to go back to work through the middle of the night. I guess my first question was anybody working last night after they talked to the president? And what are these narrow differences? And if there hasn't been any change from last night to this morning, who's really working? Who's really sitting down and trying to figure out a compromise?
Well, as you know, Nora, the main conversations are between the parties that were at the White House yesterday. So the president brought the main parties together. That was Speaker Boehner and Harry Reid, the Democratic leader in the Senate. And they've been trying to work out a compromise for some time now. But I know you said that we're dealing with a very small part of the budget, and you're right, and that's the problem, because they're trying to squeeze a huge amount of cuts out of a small part of the budget. So, in fact, you're talking about 25% cuts in some of these agencies, cuts in NIH that will affect their ability to do research, cuts in education. And what we agree with what you suggest, which is we should look at the whole pie. We should not say, okay, we're not going to deal with subsidies for the oil companies, or we're not going to deal with agricultural subsidies. Let's look at the whole thing. And they've said, no, you've got to only look at this narrow list of things that we want to talk about, because that social agenda, driving that through the budget, seems to be the priority.
Congressman Donnie Deutsch, Savannah and Nora in the last segment, I think, astutely brought up the president's management style here, is that he's staying above the fray. He's pretty much saying, hey, you Democrats, you Republicans figured out, which I actually think is what a president should do. As a Democrat, you feel your leader is kind of, handing off the ball and not running interference in the way he should and kind of letting you guys down a little bit?
No, look, I think the president's doing the right thing to bring the parties together, to try and say, look, I'm going to try and broker this discussion between the two sides. I would say that as we get into the discussion about the budget for 2012, when we do get to really the main event, it's going to be absolutely essential that the president weigh in very clearly then. We've got some very big issues. As he's indicated in the past, if you're going to deal with the big budget, you can no longer say that the top 2% of Americans are going to have the low tax rates from the last couple of years. We need to go back to the Clinton rates for the folks at the very top. And what we're seeing in the budget that's been presented by the Republicans now is they want to keep those breaks in place, including for a lot of the special interests, and cut things like education, and ultimately take away the Medicare guarantee for seniors. They're very clear about that. So the president's going to have to weigh in a big way when we get to the main event, which is coming right up. Hopefully we can get this discussion that's on us right now behind us for the good of the country, and then move on to the big debate where there's some very big differences and the American people will have a very clear choice.
And that's the important point to make. What we're talking about this week is chicken feet compared to the challenges we got ahead. Congressman Van Hollen, thanks so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, we will talk to Donald Trump about his new numbers and the latest